All right, from the Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center, let's take one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Friday morning. Once again, you guys have been minding your manners out there on the roadway this week. No accidents to report as of right now. Going to be a beautiful day. High of 87. Some late afternoon thunderstorms expected after 6 p.m. Tomorrow, still a chance for an afternoon storm, but high of 84. And then Sunday, some storms in the morning, but a high of 79. That's traffic and weather on the early game. 9 o'clock on your Friday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher along with you. Congratulations. You have made it to the end of the week. This either felt like the longest week of your life or the shortest week, and I'm not quite sure which is which because sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other.
It's a little bit of both, I would say. Definitely did feel a little bit longer this week for whatever reason. I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe it's just...
Well, for you... You were off last week.
I was.
When you come back from a trip or a vacation, that next week back at work feels like 3 times as long, right?
Dude, the first 3 days of being back, it was awful. I mean, just getting back into the swing of things and then having to deal with writer's block, which is the worst thing imaginable. Like being at a game, like a Tuesday of baseball, I'm just sitting there, I'm like, holy smokes, y'all, I cannot write to save my life. And then... eventually you get out of it, but it's tough.
It's so funny how something like writing, when you're in a rhythm with it, and again, you cover every conceivable sport, for this university, you're doing game after game after game, week after week after week. When you just take a couple days away from it, and like you said, you put your phone down, trying to get away from all the stuff as much as you can while you're down there at Disney, getting back on that horse again is a little difficult.
It's nice to take a break, but it's the trade-off. You lose your step for a few days, but now I think we're good now. Having to write about a very bad softball game last night kind of got me back into a rhythm. My gosh, man. I mean, look, I'll be honest, y'all. Like, I think I am potentially bad luck at this point, just because baseball not doing good. Men's basketball was terrible.
Sure.
Football was pretty good.
You weren't at Kentucky this weekend, and they lost there too.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. That's
true. If they run ruled Kentucky for the first time you weren't there, we might be onto something. But I don't think it's all you.
Nah, maybe those teams are just bad. But softball, I mean, softball's supposed to be good. I'm going there last night. I'm like, all right, they may not win the game, but it's gonna be a good game, good series, and I'm gonna be able to watch a good team for once in like the past for the first time this year. But nope. That was not the plan for me yesterday in a 13-1 loss.
Alabama scored 10 runs in the top of the second. Were you timing how long that half inning took?
No, I probably should have, but I mean, dude, between 3 pitching changes, you just had so many runs scored. I mean, 13 batters went to the plate. I mean, it was just a disaster of an inning. It felt like I was watching the baseball team, quite honestly. It was rough, but they have 2 more games here to kind of make up for it, but I mean, it's just wherever I go, man, bad things happen.
And look, this has been Preston and I spent the entire morning talking about overachieving, underachieving, and Ashley Chastain's Woodward squad has definitely overachieved in year number 1 to the point where they've played so well. A game like last night is like, well, how could that happen? Because they've proven to be a really good team in the SEC this year. If there's a saving grace, when they took on LSU earlier on this year, they got run ruled on Friday and proceeded to win the next 2 games of that series. That's when LSU was ranked number 3. So we've seen them do this before, not come out strong on Friday and have a good close to the weekend. So maybe that'll be in the cards this weekend as well.
And that's something that after the game yesterday that Ashley did mention about that, they did lose that game to LSU in run rule fashion, and they responded really well. And I think she said all the right things yesterday, talking about how, the team's pissed and how embarrassing that game was. And it was an awful performance. I mean, you want to talk about someone being honest yesterday about how yesterday went. It was her. I mean, she was straight up about how the game went, and it was not good enough. And that's, simply put, I mean, this is the final regular season weekend here, and you have a chance to, you're probably going to be a hosting site, but you have a chance to leave no doubt and secure it down. So you got 2 games here to kind of make up for yesterday, but I mean, my gosh, that 10-run inning was awful.
Well, and the series is of vital importance because they're right now projected as a 10 seed. Of course, like baseball, if you're a top 8 national seed, you get the hosting all the way through if you continue to win. They're 10 seed as of right now. If you can win the series against Alabama, put together a good tournament next week, you can be in the conversation for being a top 8 seed. Not easy, but they could certainly do it. So, again, a very important next couple days here for her squad.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I wouldn't worry too much after one game of seeing this team just not play good. And fortunately, for Gamecock fans out there, I'm not going to be at the next 2 games. You get to deal with me being at baseball.
I was saying, now you go back to baseball and deal with that.
Yeah, now I go back to the gulag for 3 days here and get to suffer. So it'll be we'll see if baseball can turn the tide, and maybe softball will win these next 2 games.
Well, last night was certainly not the best way to start the weekend. Did get some good news though on the recruiting front, which we'll get to here in just a second. But it is 9:00. We got to kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all 9s.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all 9s. Yesterday afternoon, we got an additional commitment for Gamecock football out of the transfer portal. This time, offensive lineman Nolan Hay commits out of Incarnate Word, which, of course, is the former school of recent number 1 overall pick and Cam Ward, as South Carolina adds another piece to the offensive line room. Guy that's played a lot of college football, over 2,000 career snaps in his time at Incarnate Word and Houston Christian before that. And look, is he going to come in and factor in as a starter? I don't know. But considering the fact that you just lost Cam Pringle and Ja'Kai Moore within the past week or so, it's another body in a room that you can never have too many of, as we've come to learn the hard way, unfortunately.
I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, you can never have too much depth in this conference. And speaking of which, I mean, look, you look at the schools he's been at, and it's like, all right, it's not big schools, but what is one thing that South Carolina seems to do relatively well? They find guys that aren't at the most glamorous schools. Like, yes, they will recruit guys from big-time schools in the SEC and other Power 4 programs, but they're also not afraid to go down to the depths of college football and look for the hidden talent that's out there. And maybe this is one of those guys here, even though he's at a smaller school. Experience matters so much because, like you said, he's played over 2,000 career snaps. He's played all over the offensive line. That is a great recipe for success at South Carolina, I think. And if he's a big enough body, if he can block, I think he could probably do pretty well here at South Carolina.
I think we've learned at this point to not get hung up on the school that somebody comes from. And yeah, is it great when you can get a former Alabama player or a guy like Brownlow Dinley that was a 5-star at A&M? Absolutely, because you already know their upside and their ceiling is very, very high. But, and I know this is a touchy subject now, go back to a couple years ago. Juice Wells came in out of James Madison. They were FCS at the time. They'd not made the transition to FBS. Obviously, in the year that he was healthy and chose to play, he was very good, right? Last year, Torricelli Simpkins comes in from North Carolina Central and was the best offensive lineman this team had. Again, both guys coming up from FCS, so that is not a reason to be discouraged. This guy hasn't played at this level. And look, there's some guys that can't translate. Sidney Fugar came from Western Illinois 2 years ago. Couldn't hang in the SEC. So those kind of things do happen, but you don't know until you see it.
Exactly. Like, don't rush to judge what this guy is or what he isn't just based on where he comes from. You got to wait until camp gets going, we start, seeing things in practice. We hear things, and then you get into the games and you see it for yourself if this guy is the real deal or not. And look, if anything, it's another body, as you said, and that is that's more than good enough at the very least. But in a room where you're losing 3 starters, like we think Boaz Stanley could be the potential starting center right now. That seems to be the way things are trending coming out of the spring camp, with Shane Beamer kind of referencing that after the spring game. And then you have the other 2 guard spots to fill. Maybe, maybe he fills one of these spots here that is up for the taking, or maybe injuries happen and he's not starting, but maybe he gets this chance later in the year. You just never know, and it's not a bad thing to go out here and get another guy to kind of fill what is kind of a glaring hole in your roster.
Yeah, like you said, Boaz Stanley seems to be the leader at center as of right now. Josiah Thompson at left tackle, that seems to be pretty secure as well. It sounds like Casey Henry is going to be at right tackle, but again, I was skeptical of him last year, so I won't put that as a lock for sure. So you at least have 2 to 3 spots on your offensive line that you're still possibly trying to figure out. I know we've talked about guys like Tree and Tro, and then factoring into those guard spots and all that kind of stuff, as well as some of the other transfers that you brought in, but you still have some spots to figure out. And this guy, he's coming in after spring practice, so he's already lost a little bit of time compared to some of these other guys that got here back in January or whatever. But, hey, if he's the right choice, if he's good enough, we'll see him out there on the field this fall, hopefully.
Exactly. That's the one thing. If you're good enough and you are doing good enough in practice and whatever, and you're working hard, like you're gonna find your way onto the field one way or another. And, look, with the offensive line, the one thing I think that really worked so well for them last year is they actually had consistency and continuity on that front. Like, 2 years ago, they had a lot of guys in there and stuff. It felt like a different offensive line nearly every game. A lot of that had to do with injuries and stuff. But once you got that same 5 in there as the year went on, I mean, there were still a lot of sacks half the time. But, like, by the end of the year, you felt like, okay, this offensive line got better. And we could see the same situation here. It's just, do they want to rock with the same 5 for every snap of every game, or do they want to try to get some different guys in there? And would a guy like Nolan Hay kind of figure into that mix?
So as of right now, they've got 4 commitments out of the portal so far in the spring. Demon Clowney and George Wilson at edge. Troy Pikes the other day from Georgia Southern at defensive line. Now Nolan Hay on the offensive line out of Incarnate Word. Again, the portal window to submit your name closed last Friday. There is no timetable in terms of getting guys out of the portal, so theoretically they could go out there and grab a few more guys. Obviously, Nolan Hay is the one that's gotten a lot of run this week. I don't know of anybody else they're looking at as of right now, but it seems like it's kind of coming to a close of what they're going to acquire out of the portal, but they addressed with just that 3 areas where they did need to have more depth. Yes,
like they needed to go out there and get a few guys. It's not like they needed a complete overhaul. That's what the winter portal is for, to go out there and just just refine your roster. And with the spring here, they got a few guys at positions of need. You knew edge was going to be a huge spot that really needed to be filled. I mean, even Beamer mentioned it, that he was a little bit concerned in the spring about it. And then obviously defensive line and offensive line. In the trenches, you needed more guys, and I feel like you got what you needed. And if there's anything else that's out there, if there's another great player out there, absolutely take a look at it. But, I don't think it's a necessity at this point for these other spots. I don't think you need a quarterback or anything.
And a lot of the heavy hitters typically do their moving in December. This time of year, because again, every school does this, where you have the sit-downs with your players and say, okay, here's what we've seen out of you up to this point. Here's where we project you to be coming up in the fall. And a lot of times you'll have guys like, look at Dante Reno, Cam Pringle, Chakai Moore, to name a few, that saw they probably weren't going to find the field this upcoming fall and want to go seek playing time elsewhere, which is completely understandable, and you're well within your right to do that. But those are kind of the guys that are out there as of right now in the portal. So, yeah, being able to go out there and get a true wide receiver number 1, bit of a tough ask. And, yeah, would they have loved to have been able to do that? Sure. That opportunity didn't present itself, and now we have in the wide receiver room. But, again, Beamer preaches the importance of depth, and that's what they've gone out there and addressed so far this spring.
Yeah, I mean, they've done what they've needed to do. And, look, if there is a star player out there, why not try to take a look into it? But I think they are in a very good spot right now heading into the summer, but we'll see.
Baseball back in action this weekend, taking on Florida. First game tonight coming up at 7 o'clock. Pregame coverage at 6:45 here on the Game. 4 o'clock first pitch tomorrow, then 1:30 on Sunday. To wrap up the series, as we've said many times, the margin for error is pretty much at 0, and we'll talk about that coming up next, as well as Coach Maneri's goals for these final handful of regular season games. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Friday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry along with you here on your Friday on the game. Gamecock baseball getting their month of May started with Florida coming up tonight for game number 1 over at Founders Park. First pitch at 7 o'clock. As we talked about many times, got to get to that magic number of 13 if you want to make the NCAA tournament. I don't expect that to happen, but the possibility is still out there. You're going to have to go 8-9, win 8 of your last 9 in conference play to achieve that goal, or go on a crazy run in Hoover. And I don't see that in the cards, but again, crazier things can happen, I guess.
I'd like to have $1 million, but that doesn't happen with the snap of my fingers. So the same thing I just think applies here. You know, it's been a very difficult season for this program, and it's not what anyone has wanted, right? You know, you bring in a new head coach, new staff, so many new faces on this team, and it just has not equated to success by any means. You've only won 1 conference series. You got swept by your arch rival. I mean, you've had so many chances to win series and win games, and you've just found the most crazy ways to lose a lot of these games. And at this point in the year, you're 5-16 in league play. This is your last real, I don't even want to call it easy, because Florida is not as bad as they were before. Like, Florida's still going to be, every series moving forward is going to be difficult for South Carolina. But
sure,
Florida, I mean, they just, you know, they started out so rough in conference play, and then they've picked it up as of late. As I mentioned the other day, you know, they had Missouri to kind of catapult themselves a little bit, wake them up and sweep that series. And then they took 2 out of 3 against Arkansas. So figuratively, I mean, coming into this weekend, you would expect Florida to continue that trend of playing good baseball.
Yeah, so they started out 1-11 conference play, and we were even talking about it, you know, a couple months ago. Like, hey, what's wrong with Florida? Why are they playing so bad? They've obviously kicked it into gear, 7-2 over their last 3 series in SEC play, and kind of like we've seen so many times, heating up right before they play South Carolina, which obviously spells concern for the Gamecocks. Coach Maneri, when talking to you guys in the media yesterday, outside of obviously winning the games, did outline his goals for the final 10 games of the regular season.
Oh, I just want to see us, you know, I've said this many times, no matter, you know, what day we have it, if we have a tough loss or whatever, we're just never going to give up. And our players know that. You're going to see, look, they're still hustling up to the cage. They're still disciplined, doing everything right. Nobody's hanging them up, you know. We're going to play this season right out to the very end. And I think you owe it to your university, you owe it to your state, you owe it to the fans that come to the game, that care about the program. Nobody's happy with, you know, the final results of what we've got. I shouldn't say final results. Nobody's happy with, you know, where we stand in the SEC standings and all those kinds of things. But you still have to get up every morning and have pride in what you do and go out there and do the very best you can. We'll analyze it all after the season's over. You know, where were our areas that need upgrading, and where, you know, what do we do going forward? You know, when you take over a program, you know, there's limited stuff that you can do to make the program better. I went through this at LSU. I went through it everywhere. You know, the Air Force Academy. I went through it at St. Thomas. It's a hard process to go through, but it also makes it that much more rewarding when you get it the way you want it to be, you know. But, you know, people aren't that patient, you know. They want to see now, you know. And I feel bad that we haven't delivered in the way that most people would want it to be delivered, you know. And, you know, like I said, we'll analyze it later where we need to improve. And we're working, obviously. You can see the young man over there around the batting cage. He had hit a lot of home runs before he got hit by a pitch the other day and broke his hand. So, you know, so we're gonna keep working at it. But we got 10 games left, and I'm excited about those 10 games. You know, we got a good Florida Gator team coming in. They're always so talented. We go to Auburn, who's having a great year. We've got another midweek game, and then we finish with, you know, a school that I know a little bit about.
Obviously, that school being LSU at the end of the regular season. And again, as we've talked about, and he alluded to it there, disappointing that they're in this position compared to where we thought they could be in year number 1 for him. And while I don't think they're going to win enough games to put themselves in position to make the NCAA tournament, you can end the season on a strong note, right? You have 5 conference wins as of right now through 21 games played. If you found a way to go 5-4 in your last 9 games and in the season 10-20, again, not the best record, but you at least ended on a bit of an upswing. What does that mean going into next season? I don't know, but it's better than going out there and going 2-7. You know what I mean? So you do have some things to play for. And like you said, you're evaluating what you have and figuring out what you can build on for next year. And I disagree slightly on one point that there's not a whole lot you can do, because there is now. You have an entire portal. Guys can go here, there, and everywhere. You've got NIL money to bring talent in. You can actually do a lot pretty quickly now to rebuild a team and to retool the roster. They just didn't do enough this past offseason.
I mean, I think they did enough. It's just, here's the problem. Again, it's the constant amount of excuses and reasons why this team just is not having success. And, I hear all about, the throwing the players under the bus and all the other reasons why things have gone wrong, except I haven't heard much about, why, Paul hasn't done a good enough job of, putting the team in positions to win. I don't hear that much really at all, to be honest. But, with where things are at, look, they went into the portal. They had an entire summer to build this roster. And, hearing him the other day here on 107.5 talking about how, he underestimated just how difficult the SEC was going to be. I mean, what are we talking about? Like, you've been in this conference for a decade and a half. You were out of it for 3 years, and it's that much different than you thought. Like, what? Like, that made no sense to me. But kind of just circling back to the main point here, like, this team has had plenty of, again, talent I don't think is the issue. That's not the issue. Do I think the coaching staff is getting enough out of this talent? Absolutely not. There's a lot of talent on this team, and I don't think a lot of these guys are hitting their full potential for multiple reasons. But the other part of it is just the fact that, the SEC is really good, but South Carolina has had opportunities to win games, and put it simply, they just haven't taken advantage of those opportunities.
Yeah, and look, you've been bitten by the injury bug quite a bit this year. The saga with SQ. You've had Talmadge LeCroy out for a while now. You obviously lose Ethan Petrie probably for the rest of the season. And you're dealing with these injuries with Nathan Hall as well. He did update yesterday that Petrie, again, it's going to be at least a couple weeks until they can reevaluate, though Nathan Hall listed as probable going into the weekend. So we'll see what he's able to do starting tonight and if he can factor in like he usually does.
Even if he's in the lineup, this is something I'm definitely concerned about, is the fact of it's his heel, so obviously it's affecting the way he's able to run.
Yep.
It's not affecting him swinging at the plate. How is he going to be able to play out there with that heel? If he's trying to, if he hits a ball into the gap, that's going to be a double, maybe a triple more times than not. But with the heel, is that just a single where he's barely making it to second? Or what if there's a ball in the outfield where he's playing center field and he's it's going to the warning track? Is he going to cover enough ground in time with the heel to be able to get there? And people say, well, we'll just DH him, but that's still
still going to have to run at some point.
You're still dealing with the running. It's very much like a Kirk Gibson situation. Like, maybe do you just pinch hit him and tell him, like, hey, look, go up there, hit the ball as hard as you can, and we'll go from there. But I don't know. I mean, he's he's probable on the latest SEC injury report, which is a good sign, but still got to see how he looks out there, because he's definitely not going to be 100%.
Yeah, we'll certainly see what happens. Again, game number 1 coming up tonight at 7 o'clock over at Founders Park. Pregame coverage starting at 6:45 right here on the game. Sunday, the game 3 of the series, wrapping things up at 1:30. Have 2 family 4-packs right now at 803-404-6100. Win yourself a pair of 4-pack tickets to go see the Gamecocks and the Gators wrapping up the series coming up on Sunday. Callers number 5 and 6 right now at 803-404-6100. Each win yourself that family 4-pack of tickets. We have a new chapter in the Tyrese Halliburton dad versus Giannis Antetokounmpo saga. I'll let you hear that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Beltry along with you on your Friday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Belcher with you on your Friday here on the Game. Boy, it has been a interesting week when it comes to headlines in the sports world, both things on and off the field / court. We actually ran a poll on our Twitter yesterday. Question is, who had the biggest mess up of the week? Options are Jeff Ulbricht's son. Of course, he was the one responsible for the Shedeur Sanders prank phone call. Tyrese Halliburton's dad, or Bill Belichick's PR strategy. Jack, do you have a vote for who you think should win this?
I did just cast my vote just the second, actually. Jeff Ulbricht's son. It's a no-brainer. Like, again, I said it yesterday. It's the stupidest thing this kid could have done. And this is a college kid we're talking about making a very, 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 very bad mistake.
So I agree with you. I voted for that as well. Ulbricht's son is winning at 47% of the vote. Belichick's PR strategy at 44%. Actually kind of surprised that Tyrese Halliburton's dad isn't getting more hate here. Only 8% of the vote for Mr. Halliburton. And again, that was the other night when the Pacers beat the Bucks in overtime to win that series, and he goes out there and goes face-to-face with Giannis Antetokounmpo and is waving the towel with his son's face on it and stuff like that. We heard the other day Giannis and Tyrese talk about it after the game. Have you heard his dad talk about it, though? Have you heard this clip?
I have not.
His dad went on TMJ4 News. I'm assuming that's a local Indiana affiliate.
Probably.
And was asked to tell his side of the story. I'm just going to let you listen to this, and you be the judge of how true what Miss Halliburton says is here in this clip.
When I turned, it might have seemed like I was looking at him, but I really wasn't. I was looking through him. That's how I was in the moment. I know it looked like we were looking, like I was staring him down, but it wasn't like that. It was in the moment as if I was looking right through him. And yes, I had the banner in my hand going, and I was yelling, yay, yay, yay. Giannis never said anything to me. I never said anything to Giannis. There was no back and forth.
But that changed when Giannis went face-to-face with John near his baseline seats a few moments later.
He grabbed my hands, he put his forehead on my forehead, and he said, don't disrespect me. Don't effing disrespect me. Okay? And I said to him, I was not trying to disrespect you, which I wasn't. I'm telling you, I did not do that on purpose. I really did not. And then I said to him, I love you. He said back to me, I love you. We patted chest. He gave us a thumbs up, and he walked away.
To quote Ron Burgundy, I don't believe you.
What the? What was that? Oh, my gosh.
Okay. So in every situation, there's side A, side B, and then the truth lies somewhere in between. We heard Giannis talk about it, where he basically said, yeah, he came up in my face, waving a towel with his son's face on it, saying, yeah, this is what the F we do, and talking all this and talking all that. And Giannis did say that he said, don't disrespect me. So that part's true. But for Mr. Halliburton to say that, no, I wasn't trash talking him. I was just going, yay, yay. We can read lips, right? If you watch the video, he's saying a lot more than yay to Giannis. And then this I love you exchange, that didn't happen either.
No. Like, what are we talking about? And the part that just gets me is the looking right through him. Like, what is he, a ghost? Like,
yeah, Giannis is hard to miss.
Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, this is just mind-boggling to hear that he would say something like that on television. Luckily, it's not national television, since I think you're right. It does sound like a local news station out there in probably like the Indiana area. But I mean, my gosh, I mean, can this not be any worse? And I'm glad the Bucks and the Pacers have kind of taken a hold of this thing and made sure that the situation is handled properly. I mean, it's unacceptable that something like this can happen. And I mean, again, how he just randomly got into the court and got up in Giannis's face before like security came out there. I mean, that's just like what are we doing here?
And the worst part of it is he took away from the moment, right? His son hit the game-winning shot in overtime to win a first-round series. That's a big deal. Nobody's talking about this week because they're talking about what his dad did instead. So you stole the moment from your son, which I think is the worst part of all this.
Why can't parents just be parents? Watch from the shoot. Put parents in like the suites, man. Like just watch the game and just enjoy the moment. Like you have your son's flag. You're probably having the time of your life. Why do you have to do something so
And look,
stupid?
I don't mind people being excited and obviously supporting their children, but this is a step too far. Again, if you're going to go on the court at the end of this game, why are you not going over there and celebrating with your son? Like, if you really want to be out there and get in somebody's face, go celebrate with your kid that just accomplished this. Don't go after the person on the other team who's just trying to leave the court as calmly as possible, because Giannis is a very nice and calm guy. Why do this?
And it's like, do him and Tyrese have like beef or something like that we just don't know about?
Does
like,
anybody have beef with Giannis? I don't think they do.
No. And if you do, what are you doing? Why are you having beef with Giannis, who's also just a nice guy, but he's also the Greek freak. He's a menace out there on the court. So I just, again, this is just, you know, I don't like to use the word stupid, but man, it's just like this Jeff Ulbricht's son. I mean, the whole Belichick thing. It's just, I mean, my goodness, man. Do we not put thought into some of the things that we do? I mean, what happened to turning on your brain? I mean, I don't know. This guy must have been like drunk or something. I mean, I don't get it. I seriously don't.
Yeah, and like you alluded to, the Pacers have said he will not attend any of the team's home or road games for the foreseeable future, basically banning him for at least the rest of the playoff run, and we'll see if that carries over to next year because, look, whether your kid's on the team or not, being there is a privilege, not a right. And if you abuse your privilege, they can take it away from you. And look, I'll be honest with you, I don't think Tyrese was upset about them doing this because, again, Pop stole your moment. I think he needs to learn a lesson.
Yeah, he does, and rightfully so. And it sucks for Giannis that he had to deal with something like that right after another first-round exit for the Bucks. And it does take away from the moment for Tyrese, and it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it is. But you did what you did. If anything, own up to it. Again, we all know what we saw.
Don't double down on it.
Yeah, don't treat us like we're all stupid. We are very aware of what we're seeing in that video, and you're not going to pull the wool over anyone's eyes saying, no, I was just saying, yeah, and we told each other we loved each other. Giannis even said, I didn't know it was his dad until after the fact. I thought it was a fan.
Yeah.
So why would Giannis have that kind of interaction with a random fan?
Literally, it's just beyond me. I don't get it, and I'm glad this guy is not going to be at any more games for the foreseeable future. That's the way it needs to be. Parents, don't be like this guy. Don't be like this guy. Do you have a star athlete in your family?
The unfortunate part is there's probably a lot of parents out there that said, I would have done the same thing.
Which I'm not even going to justify, but like just if it's one thing if the guy, like if the other player, like if Giannis were a jerk to Tyrese, like, okay, maybe I can see it a little bit. But again, Giannis is such a nice guy, and they don't have beef. So like, what are you doing? Like, would you go up to any random player and do that, or did it just have to be Giannis for God knows what reason? Because he's the star player of the Bucks. Like,
because you knew he wasn't going to smack you in the face for doing this because he's so nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, it's just it's so silly.
Yeah, I don't know, but that's the latest on that. Pacers get the series with the Cavaliers rolling coming up on Sunday. Don't have tip-off time for that yet, but it will be game number 1 of the Eastern semifinals. We gave away some Gamecock baseball tickets a moment ago. I've got some Firefly tickets as well for tomorrow's game as they take on the Hickory Crawdads. That is out at Segra Park for a 6:05 first pitch tomorrow evening. Colors number 4 and 5 right now at 803-404-6100. Win yourself a couple of tickets. Let's see, 2 4-packs actually to go see the Fireflies take on the Crawdads tomorrow afternoon out at Segra Park. We'll come back and wrap up the hour. Mascots fighting each other in a boxing ring? I'll tell you about that next. It is The Extra Point. It's Ed and Jack Feltry on your Friday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's Outerhead and Jack Beltry. Appreciate everybody watching us on the Game TV, sponsored by our friends at Shepherd's Glass and powered by Integrated Media. Also, those check us out on the 107.5 The Game app, which you can download from the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store. We'll get to the mascot fight here coming up in just a second. But, Jack, you pointed something out to me yesterday that I don't know if you understand the full lore of exactly, but the Atlanta Braves have acquired Jesse Chavez for the 3rd time this season, the 8th time in 4 years, and the 9th time in his career. Jesse Chavez and the Atlanta Braves have the ultimate on-again, off-again relationship, as he is now back with the main club coming out of the bullpen.
And the craziest thing about it is seemingly every time he gets sent back to the Braves, he just turns into a awesome pitcher.
It is insane the difference in his stats when he pitches for Atlanta and when he pitches somewhere else. Like, it is a night and day thing. I don't know if it's comfort. I don't know if it's working with the pitching or like the pitching coaching staff. Like, whatever it is, he just loves pitching in Atlanta and always finds his way back to the roster at some point.
It's insane. And look, he's got so many teams on his resume. I mean, just to go off real quick here. Pirates from 2008 to 09, Braves in 2010, Royals 2010 to 11, Blue Jays in 12, A's from 12 to 15, so he's actually there for a few years, Blue Jays in 16, Dodgers in 16, Angels in 17, Rangers in 18, Cubs in 18, Rangers again in 19 and 20, Braves in 21 when they won the World Series, 22 Cubs, 22 Braves again, Angels 22, and the Braves up until now. It's crazy.
I think we can qualify him as a journeyman.
Maybe. I could say so.
But it's so funny because every couple of weeks, another pitcher gets hurt or they're shuffling around the roster or whatever, and here comes Jesse right back again. And I fully expect if he goes out there this weekend against the Dodgers, he's probably going to throw a shutout inning or two and look as strong as ever at the age of 41.
And the guy just does not have the zip on his pitches, but he still manages to get the job done. And I don't know how he does it with the Braves. He stinks everywhere else he goes, but hey, the Braves, being with the Braves has saved his career to some extent, and it's also helped the Braves. So good for him.
It's hilarious that it continues to happen exactly that way. Speaking of the Braves, and you brought this to my attention, there's no love lost between the Braves and the Phillies in general, right? There's really not any love loss when it comes to Blooper and the Philly Fanatic. A lot of people, and Blooper was unveiled, I want to say in 2018, as the Braves were moving, or they were in their second year at Truist Park then. But a lot of people immediately thought that Blooper was like a knockoff of the Philly Fanatic. So these two guys have had beef for a while. That's going to culminate when the Braves take on the Phillies at the end of May with a 3-round boxing match between Blooper and the Philly Fanatic on May the 27th before the game.
I love it. Like, this is peak right here. And I hope it is televised on the national broadcast, if it happens to be on like Fox or ESPN or something, or if it's just on the local television stations. I want to see this. Someone better have their phone out for this moment to record it, because I think it's going to be awesome. And it's probably just, a gag for fun, all that. But seriously, the Philly Fanatic is such an iconic mascot. And then, Blooper has been around for a few years now. He's trying to work his way up the ladder, I would say, in the mascot rankings. But hey, a win in a boxing match over the Fanatic, that'd be big.
I think the Braves have done a really good job. And I remember I was doing just my local college radio with my buddies back in school when they unveiled Blooper, and we talked about it the next day. And one of my buddies went on this long rant about how stupid he looked and how goofy it was as a mascot. And my stance is like, come on, mascots are really for kids. Like, we're really getting upset about this. But I think the Braves done a really good job of, it's funny because he does not speak, he doesn't have a mouth, giving Blooper a voice through social media. Because he has his own Twitter account, which is hilarious if you follow it.
Oh, it's so funny.
His antics when he's at Braves games, dancing and all that kind of stuff, they've given him a personality, which I think has endured him to a lot of people.
But the Fanatic, though, The Fanatic.
Look, Fanatic's legendary. I'm not denying that.
The Fanatic is iconic as it gets. I think it is personally the best mascot in the MLB, perhaps in all of sports, just for all the the funny scenes and all that stuff that you see with the Fanatic at Philly games. But yeah, I mean, look, this is something that I did not have on my bingo card when I texted you about it yesterday. But hey, I'd be down to see it. I'd like to see more of this too.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It begged the question in my mind: if you could have Cocky box any other mascot in college football, who would you want to see him square up with?
I think there's only one real choice, to be honest. It's the Clemson Tiger. Whatever mascot you want to pick. The 1.5 Tiger, the main Tiger. I mean, it's just, everyone's picking that if you're a South Carolina, folk out there.
Yeah, and it's been explained to me before, but I forget, what's the story behind the half Tiger?
I don't know. Let me see.
Because they're always together.
Yeah.
Is it supposed to be like his kid?
So the half in the context of Clemson's mascot refers to the jersey number worn by the younger, smaller sidekick, the Tiger Cub. The Tiger Kid. All right. So it's just the younger version. So maybe that's
okay,
like half the size.
So do you want Cocky to beat him up too?
I mean, yeah. I mean, this mascot looks pretty silly.
Beat up the full size version, then beat up the half size version.
Yeah, maybe let like Miss Cocky or Cocky's parents beat up on the little one.
Maybe so.
So you don't want.
You know what?
Yeah.
Sir Big Spur can take on half. How about that?
I like that.
I think he'd hold his own.
I think he could.
That'll do it for hour number one of the Extra Point. Coming up in hour number two, running the numbers with our guy Corey Parson of the Bet MGM Network. Jack, we'll see you back in here on Monday.
Yeah, man, looking forward to it.
It's the Extra Point here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Friday on the Game. It's 10 o'clock. As we do each and every Friday, it's time to run the numbers with our guy, Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network. Corey, appreciate you taking your time as always. Happy month of May. How we doing?
Yeah, glad to be inside the month of May. Obviously, another step closer to the football season. So definitely feeling pretty good about that. So here we go again. You know what I'm saying? Now we get a chance to, obviously, NBA, NHL going on right now. But in the betting world, we kind of turn our sights to football, whether it be, the point spreads. Well, not really the point spreads. We'll have the NFL schedule released next week, so we'll start to see some point spreads. Yep. But we also will start to see, over-unders, totals, win totals, and stuff like that. So that's where the sharp money is resting right now. So definitely a good time to hop in here today and have a little special treat for the people as we look at something that's going to take place, an award that is going to be given out way in December. So fun to talk about it. Look at some of the odds, and maybe see a spot where we can maybe put a couple dollars down to get some early money out there.
Of course, he's talking about the Heisman Trophy. I believe December 13th this year is when it's going to be handed out. So we got a long way to go and a lot of football to be played between now and then. But what's especially exciting, and we've looked at several different, obviously, sites and what their various odds are. And BetMGM's site kind of falls in line with a lot of the other ones that I've seen in terms of overall Heisman odds. And Lenora Sellers, right towards the top of the list, actually tied with Dante Moore of Oregon, as well as Julian Sayin at Ohio State, as well as DJ Lagway with the fifth best odds to win the Heisman Trophy at plus 1,800. Again, we're still a long way away from the season starting, but like you said, you can get in on these guys early, get these odds, and who knows, if Lenore Sellers plays as well as we think he can play, those odds will obviously shrink as the season goes along, and you can obviously take advantage of getting in early if you choose to do that.
Yeah, no doubt. And Sellers is a guy coming in right now on the BetMGM site at 18-1 odds. Last year, just a fantastic season, 25 total touchdowns, carried the ball for 4.1 yards a carry, also threw the ball for 8.5 yards a pop, completed about 65% of his passes as well. Now, and South Carolina was a good team, a team that, was competing and maybe had an outside shot to get in the college football. Us right here, 6'3", 242, Josh Allen type athlete, what is almost becoming the prototypical style quarterback that NFL decision makers are looking for. And if he can have a big season, he'll definitely be in the mix again. We heard some Heisman Trophy talk early in the season. People were saying that he was, a guy that could be a Heisman sleeper or a Heisman dark horse. This year, erase the sleeper, erase the dark horse. Lenore Sellers is going to be in the race for Heisman Trophy this year. And at 18-1 odds, I would get in now. Normally, I would say, these numbers fluctuate throughout the course of the season as wins and losses and injuries go. But at 18-1, this is a solid number right here. And I would take a ticket out on this right now and go to the window.
And we saw, in those last 6 games of last season when he truly kind of came into his own, put up very respectable numbers. And I said if you took those numbers and duplicated them over the first 6 games, you make a case for him being in New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Obviously, that's a lot easier said than done to go in the season and, do it over the course of 12 games, maybe a 13th if you're playing in the SEC championship game. But we certainly believe in his abilities there. And, if Lenore Sellers is in the conversation for the Heisman by the time December rolls around, that's probably going to mean South Carolina's had a pretty good season themselves.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's a big part of it right there. They're going to have some opportunities to play some big-time games versus some big-time opponents down the stretch. And if Sellers can get those wins, and obviously Clemson at the end of the season will be a big one as well, there is a lot of love nationally for Lenora Sellers. So it's not going to be easy, though, because there is some big names and a very big name at the top of the board.
Quickly, we'll kind of look at those other ones that he's around. Again, it's Dante Moore out at Oregon, Julian Sayin at Ohio State, and DJ Lagway at Florida. Moore and Sayin have not started any games in college, both highly touted guys coming out of high school. And Lagway, of course, was marred by injury a lot last year, but showed some signs of potential as well when he was healthy and able to pull off some of those big wins for Florida down the stretch there. So kind of an interesting little bit of company that Lenore Sellers in as far as those 18-1 odds are concerned.
Yeah, definitely guys that he's down there around are guys that are going to be in the mix as well, depending on how their season goes. That's such an important part of it. When you look at a guy like Dante Moore, he kind of reminds me of Cam Ward. I mean, this guy is one of the prettiest pocket passers you'll ever see. Kid out of Detroit, Michigan is going to get in that good system out there at Oregon. Big Ten team, they're going to have a chance to play in and compete and possibly win a lot of critical football games. I like this kid's arm a lot. I don't know if he is going to win a Heisman Trophy this year, but I see a first-round NFL draft, not first round, but a number 1 overall NFL draft pick in his future. And when it comes to Lagway, it's this, we talked about Florida last week, and if Florida does what people think Florida can do this year with that schedule, Lagway will be in the mix because Florida will be having a good season.
Again, talking to Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network as we run the numbers like we do each and every Friday. We'll go to the top of the list now. You alluded to it a moment ago. The surprise for no one, Arch Manning with the best overall odds at 6-1 to win the Heisman Trophy. You look at a lot of mock drafts. He's projected to be the number 1 overall pick. Obviously comes from a very famous football family that influences this a lot. And look, his ceiling is extremely, extremely high. If he ends up being as good as we think he can be, like he was built out of high school, he's going to be a superstar. My reservation is we've only seen him in a handful of starts, only played situationally last year at Texas in some of those big games. There's still a lot about Arch Manning we do not know.
Yes, but we're getting ready to figure it out this season, and he's going to have all the hype of a big-time blue blood program with the Texas Longhorns. Obviously, you know what his lineage is with his last name, Arch Manning, the next of the Manning crew to come up, Archie's grandson. So this right here at 6-1 odds right now on BetMGM, normally, like I said, I would say these numbers fluctuate back and forth throughout the course of the season. Even at 6-1, with him being at the top of the board, yeah, I would get a ticket on this one as well because he's coming in as the odds-on favorite, and it's going to be pretty hard to knock Arch Manning off because all that he has going with him, a powerful schedule behind him, a good team as well, and just that allure, that legacy of being a Manning is going to put him in the spotlight to be the Heisman Trophy frontrunner for the majority of the season. I don't want to go as far as to say that he would have to trip up not to win it because other people can have fantastic seasons as well. But Arch Manning is the favorite based on name and based on ability as well, completing almost 70% of his passes last year. And he's got a good offense around him. The kid's got a little bit of wheels too. This is a different style of quarterback that, in the collegiate level. So we'll see what Manning can do. But at 6-1 odds, I still think it's a good bet.
Second best odds go to Garrett Nussmeier, returning for another year as a starter at LSU. And he's somebody that in a weird way I feel like is kind of flying under the radar. A good, consistent year. Last year, obviously, had a lot of weapons around him in that offense. And somebody that I think in a lot of people's eyes looks very pro-ready, obviously on a very good team with a ton of talent like LSU. And I feel like he's somebody that, may kind of sneak up on people in terms of a Heisman race this year because he's just not somebody that really stands out in terms of, his personality or anything like that garners a lot of headlines compared to maybe some LSU quarterbacks of the past, but a very efficient football player. And again, not surprising to see him with the second best odds as of right now.
Yeah, he's not going to get there with 4 losses, though. So they're going to need to have a better team this year around him. They're going to need to win more football games. And you're right, he is sliding under the radar. But obviously the sharps out in Vegas do like him and think that they can get it done this year. When you look at the player and his numbers last year, the touchdown numbers are astronomical, but that's how LSU plays offense. Also threw for over 4,000 yards. That completion percentage sitting at about 64 last year. That average yards per catch, though, at under 8 is not really something that you want to see. Doesn't have no wheels, can't get it done that way. This is the bet that I would leave on the table.
After him, you go to our first non-quarterback on the list, that being Jeremiah Smith, the very talented now sophomore at Ohio State, who, again, a season ago just seemed completely unguardable in that team that went on to win the national championship. And it's such a rare thing in today's age for a non-quarterback to win the award. Of course, Travis Hunter just won it as a dual wide receiver and defensive back this past year as just kind of this freak unicorn that we don't really see too often. But Jeremiah Smith very much reminds me of Devontae Smith back in 2020 in that crazy year he had at Alabama where he was unquestionably the best player in all of college football and won the Heisman Trophy because of that. But for a guy playing a spot like wide receiver, you really have to put up crazy, crazy numbers to make yourself undeniable if you want to win what's largely become a quarterback award.
16 touchdowns last year, over 1,300 yards receiving on 76 catches. At 17 yards a pop. That's Justin Jefferson style numbers right there. We know what kind of talent at wide receiver Ohio State has, but you mentioned the fact that doing it from the wide receiver position. You're not a unicorn type guy that's going to play both sides of the ball, but this kid is so good. Another pro-ready Ohio State wide receiver, yes. Heisman Trophy winner, likely not.
After that, we go right to the upstate for a familiar name, that being Cade Klubnik at 11-1 odds, fourth best overall to win the Heisman Trophy. Had a very big step forward last year. I look at the fact that he's getting back Antonio Williams, Brian Wesco, as well as others in that receiving core. Like, he could really be primed for a huge season, not only to propel himself in the conversation for the Heisman Trophy, but you look at some mock drafts. Saw one today from ESPN. They have him projected as the #1 overall quarterback out of this class. So he's also making a case for himself to be able to play at the next level as well.
Yeah, Klubnik definitely did himself a solid last year by stepping up and playing up to his capabilities. Over 3,600 passing yards, 36 touchdowns last year as well. He's got enough wheels to get out the pocket and get some stuff done. Obviously, playing up there in the upstate is going to be key for him because he's going to get a chance to play in some big-time matchups. Not a guy that I really think is a Heisman Trophy candidate, though. He's going to have to come up in some of the biggest of big games, and I'm not sure they're going to be on the schedule for the Tigers.
One more here as we were running the numbers with that guy, Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network, just ahead of Lenore Sellers with 14-1 odds, that being Drew Aller of Penn State, somebody that I kind of feel like has been around college football forever now, but we've seen him get better as the years have gone along. Last year took a really big step forward when it came to throwing the ball downfield, a whole lot better than it had been the season prior. Obviously, a team that made the college football playoff and made a serious run in that, getting all the way into those quarterfinals before they fell to Notre Dame. And obviously him coming back for a third year as a starter, a lot of excitement up there in Happy Valley. And again, the folks out there in Las Vegas thinking pretty highly of his opportunity to maybe make a run at the Heisman Trophy himself.
Yeah, they may think highly of it. I'm not. I did like him.
And that's an interesting thing that you bring up, these high-profile games against really good opponents. Every Heisman Trophy winner has to have their moment or set of moments, and that usually comes on national TV against a good brand opponent. And playing in the Big Ten, playing in the SEC, obviously have a lot of those opportunities, which is why we routinely see the Heisman Trophy winners come from those selective conferences, obviously last year being an exception with Travis Hunter. But you definitely need to go out there and make statements in addition to having really good stats to be in consideration for this award.
Yeah, no doubt. It has to be in those big primetime games versus big opponents where the national audience gets to see you. And that is so critical in winning the Heisman Trophy. So you got to have good PR behind you, but the best PR comes on the field in nationally televised spotlight games.
Again, it's exciting. The Lenore Sellers part of the conversation, something I'm going to be tracking all summer long, as well as when we get into the season, when the fall rolls around here as well. He's Corey Parson of the BetMGM Network, and Corey, we'll check in with you again next week.
All right, thanks a lot, Tyler.
This is the Extra Point. We'll continue on here on your Friday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you. Hanging out as we do each and every Friday with our guy, Joe Machika. Joe, how we doing today?
Doing well, Tyler. How about you? Appreciate you having me on as always. Yeah, doing well this Friday morning. Beautiful day out here in Columbia. Excited to get to it.
Have you gone and paid your respects to Don Staley's statue downtown yet?
I've not driven through the area quite yet, but excited for Dawn to get her statue and everything, especially after Gino throwing the shade at Asia. I was glad Dawn had the opportunity to offer a rebuttal in that case. So happy for her. Finally get her long overdue statue, and it's going to be interesting to see what players next up, right? Because it's there have been a lot of players that have come through this program, made an impact similar to Asia Wilson. So who's next is the question, Tyler.
Yeah, we brought up yesterday, probably Aaliyah Boston kind of next in line, and kind of makes you wonder. And look, not everybody gets a statue because those are only reserved for very rare instances. But man, I can't help but wonder, are we going to be having these same conversations?
Columbia for sure.
Do you see how upset UConn Twitter was over Don's little pushback at Gino?
I did. And, to me, that makes no sense because obviously Don was going to offer a rebuttal anyways. The statue was coming. And Gino, to throw shade at Asia Wilson is a little bold, especially because she's Columbia homegrown. She brought, one of the first national titles to this program and everything. She's just very special to the city of Columbia. And I don't know what Gino was thinking. He was throwing shots at the Queen. And, if you're going to throw a shot at the Queen, you best not miss.
The funniest reaction I saw to it was somebody quote tweeting the clip of Dawn kind of clapping back, and this person said well, Dawn tries to make everything about herself. I'm like, if they're putting a statue up of you downtown, it is all about you, and if you want to make it about yourself, that's totally fine.
Yeah, honestly, you deserve your time in the sun. If you look, especially with Dawn's case, right? You look at how many different people she's elevated over the years, right? How many players she's been able to elevate into the WNBA and stuff. So yeah, if you're getting a statue, Tyler, yes, you deserve a little bit of time, talking about yourself because if you're getting a statue, a lot of times that means you haven't done much gloating about yourself anyways. So
obviously, well-deserved honor, and obviously drive by and see it as it'll be looking over downtown for a very long time to come. Kind of looking at things from the transfer portal standpoint. We obviously have talked a lot about the additions that they've had with Tanaya Latson as well as Medina Okot from Florida State and Mississippi State, respectively. But there was a lot of buzz they might be able to nail or land Gianna Neepkins out of Utah. Unfortunately, that recruitment does come to an end yesterday as she commits to UCLA, obviously another top-end program that South Carolina is very likely to see at some point next year, maybe in the NCAA tournament. But again, a high-profile program that Neepkins had her pick of the litter of, and unfortunately she did not choose South Carolina.
Yeah, Tyler Neepkins, would have been a great piece to add, help with depth. Brought in just in case, or, because in case Fulwiley or Johnson was going to leave, Fulwiley left. But you added, Tanaya Latson, the leading scorer in college basketball. So, you've already added two things that this team was missing last year. Somebody that they can just get the ball to, like an elite scorer, just be like, go get me a bucket. So they got that with Latson, and then they got a true center with Okot. So even though you're missing out on Neepkins, I think she was kind of, I guess, not to say that she was a third pick, because very talented player in her own right, but out of this whole transfer portal season and run through the portal Dawn Staley has had already, I think Neepkins was kind of, one of the other options. Obviously, she got her first two picks out of the portal with Latson and Okot, so stinks to see Neepkins, head to UCLA, but, awesome to see that the fact that you are able to bring in two things that you were missing most last year.
Well, that's kind of the funny thing is we have such a high standard for what this women's basketball program is. When you miss out on somebody like that, you're like, how did we not manage to land her? But then again, you look at what they've already gotten out of the transfer portal, including the nation's leading scorer in Tanaya Latson, and say, well, you've actually done pretty good, even if Neepkins decides not to come here.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. And Dawn started right away. The Latson edition was, a couple days after, the national championship. And obviously that coincided with Raven Johnson coming back and her decision, to stick around for one more year and not go to the WNBA draft. But yeah, they were working right away. And again, two needs that this team last year, a team that you went to the national championship with. Two of the biggest needs that you needed last year are back and on this team. So you have two new roles. I'm excited to see what Staley and how this roster shakes out next year because, again, Latson's going to be fantastic and Olcott's going to provide so much more help down low.
Charlie Kareem, who, of course, does bracketology for the women's basketball on ESPN, put out his list of top 10 teams that he felt like won when it came to the transfer portal. South Carolina right up there towards the top, coming in at number 3. Obviously a lighter class in terms of numbers with Latson and Okah, but as you alluded to, you went out there and addressed areas of need. Obviously you have a ton of talent that is coming back, more freshmen coming in that are very talented, so no reason to think that, like every single year, this team shouldn't be in the conversation for making another deep run and going to the Final Four again.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Especially, again, the roster buildup is exactly where you want it to be. And they've already started to get to work, right? Joyce Edwards coming back for her sophomore season. She impressed a lot in her freshman year. And, again, if she can continue to elevate, even more so in her sophomore year, yeah, we might be talking about, a potential statue again from her impact potentially. But, yeah, it's long ways to go till next season starts and a lot of work to be done. But I know certainly internally this team is already hungry to get back to the national championship, get back to championship weekend. So already hungry in the portal, getting things done and, restocking and retouting for next year.
Right behind them on this list at number 4, to no surprise, the LSU Tigers, who added Amaya Joyner from East Carolina, Katie Caval from Notre Dame, and, of course, last Friday we found out Malaysia Fulwiley was going to be going to the other side of things. We've talked about this a lot this week. Haven't gotten your take on it, but this rivalry that's been brewing these past couple years between Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey. Remember, Kim Mulkey has not beaten Dawn Staley since she's been at LSU, so it's one-sided as of right now, but it adds just another extra layer of juice with Malaysia Fulwiley going over there now.
Yeah, no kidding, Tyler. I think Fulwiley, that whole situation is, it's going to be rumored and talked about for ages. To see, if it's really going to give Mulkey that extra edge, we'll have to see. Obviously she was able to add a couple other players, one from Notre Dame, one from ECU. So that'll certainly help with depth. And that's always been Mulkey's problem. Whenever she comes up to Columbia, she, usually plays about 6 or 7 deep. Meanwhile, Dawn's about, 8 to 9, 7 to 8, 9 deep. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think, as weird and wild as the Fulwiley thing was, I think when she hit the portal, it's like, all right, where's she going to go? Because South Carolina is one of the mountaintop teams right now. So she's either going to UConn, LSU, or UCLA, really. And so she ends up at LSU. I think the fan base, for the most part, is just, mostly wishing her the best. Obviously, everything that she's been able to do. And obviously, Raven Johnson coming back, clogging things up at the top of the lineup. So, fan base, a lot of people reacted differently, different ways. But, she's at LSU right now and, certainly makes for one heck of a return trip.
I think the fan base would have been cool for her going anywhere but Clemson and LSU. Those seem to be kind of the two places they did not want to see her land, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. I think I couldn't see her going to Clemson regardless because she would have had to rebuild, a lot of that program up from the jump. But yeah, LSU, just everything that Kim Mulkey's, brought to this rivalry and the Tigers have brought to this rivalry. It's been physical. It's been, really, really heated the last time these two teams have played. So it'll be interesting. I mean, considering how cool, calm, and collected Lay is, right, how much she gets into this rivalry, how much, fire that'll bring to it. I know from a South Carolina standpoint, internally, I doubt they wanted her to transfer to LSU, right? Because, again, such a heated rival, and now they got to flip the script, on a player that, they were so close to last year. So it's hard to do, but plenty of time to do it. Certainly circling that one on the schedule, I'm sure, over there at Colonial Life.
It's funny, I haven't heard Kim Mulkey complain about getting a McDonald's All-American via the transfer portal, right?
I've not heard any complaints out of Baton Rouge for another McDonald's All-American, Tyler, but I don't think Carolina fans should be too worried about it as they're adding a couple more, through the portal. So you lose some, you gain some, I guess, in the case of Dawn Staley. So still the same amount of McDonald's All-Americans here in Columbia. But
that game will definitely be fun when they play that in the regular season down there in Baton Rouge. We'll switch gears over to football coming up next. Texas going to be spending a lot of money on its football roster this upcoming season. Is that an indication of what we should expect every single year in college football? We'll discuss coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our head hanging out with Joe Machika on your Friday here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. It's all right hanging out with Joe Machika here on your Friday on the game. We'll get back into the football conversation here in just a second, but it is time for Who Sprung a Leak, brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection, and we go to the NBA playoffs last night. Detroit and the Knicks. Do you know what the Pistons win probability peaked at last night, Joe, by chance?
I do not. I was watching that game, though, but I don't know what the exact win probability was. That game was crazy.
They peaked at 93.1% win probability with 2:35 left to go, leading by a score of 112 to 105. Over the next 2.5 minutes, they proceeded to get outscored they proceeded to get outscored 11 to 1, with Jalen Brunson doing most of the heavy lifting, scoring 8 of those 11 points.
Yeah, Tyler, and there's the series right there. In Detroit too. Like, spring in the league, man. Like, you gotta find a way to hold on to that basketball game. I know Detroit's banged up. They added Toby Harris, but yeah, I mean, you gotta find a way to push that series to 7.
Well, and then they got the ball back with 4.3 seconds left. Go down to the other end of the court and turn the ball over. They don't give it a shot off to attempt to tie the game because they just turn it over instead.
Yep. I mean, like, that's Detroit basketball. I mean, thinking how the Pistons have been these last couple of years, it makes sense, right? Like, going up against the Knicks too, Tom Thibodeau, and that, how much, how organized they are. It's yeah. I mean, Detroit. I expect nothing less, Tyler.
Yeah, and so the Knicks move on and advance. I'm assuming you're a Pacers fan, being that you're from that area.
I'm actually a Bulls fan. My dad
Bulls fan, okay.
Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad grew up on the north side of Chicago. So, Bulls, Blackhawks, White Sox, and Bears.
Gotcha.
Even though my dad's somehow, like, my whole family's Cubs fans. So I got stuck with the Sox.
Well, drew the short end of the stick, but I think that's a perfect transition over to what I want to talk about here. I don't know if you've seen the report that Texas is expected to pay between $35 and $40 million for their football team's roster this upcoming year. Similar to Ohio State, had about the $20 million roster a year ago en route to the national championship. And we talked about this a little bit yesterday. This isn't anything new. I feel like every single year we're going to hear about one team that's going to spend more than any others, and they're automatically going to become the favorite for the national championship. And when you bring up the White Sox, it's interesting to me because, and I don't mean to make you feel bad about this, the White Sox are 29th in Major League Baseball when it comes to overall payroll. So most people go into the season knowing that the Chicago White Sox are not going to win the World Series. Same thing. I'll just kind of run through the teams at the bottom of the rung here. The Marlins, the Athletics, the Rays, the Pirates, the Brewers, the Nationals. Most of these teams probably not thought of too likely as to make any kind of deep postseason run if they even get there, because they're not paying their athletes enough to get high caliber talent. I feel like, Joe, we're turning that way in college football, and the numbers aren't public, but you can look at the most profitable athletic associations across college sports, and usually you can pick your national championship out of those first handful of teams.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. And, it stinks. I mean, as somebody who's loved college football, like, I know everyone who's watched college football and kind of come through it, like, seeing these, outrageous roster, like, dollar signs, it stinks, right? Like, it just shows how college football is evolving and how, like, the rich are just going to win, right? Like, you look at Texas. Like, I don't think you get Texas money at UMass. Like, it's just not how it works. So the parity in college football is kind of leaving. Right now, it also does say too, if you do have like a good offseason, right, with boosters and donors and stuff like that, it doesn't say that you can't compete with everybody else, but it just makes it that much harder when you're not one of the most profitable athletic departments in the country. And at Texas they can do that, right? I think you said 40 to 60 or something like that for this roster.
35 to 40.
That's absurd for a college football roster. But, I mean, it makes sense. Like, right, you say Texas, it's like, all right, like that makes plenty of sense. They're out there, plenty of oil money. Had you dropped a UMass or a Clemson, even a Clemson on me, that would have been a stretch because Even considering how far they are, that's a lot of money for a college football team, right?
Sure.
And we saw how far it took Ohio State, right? Took them to a national championship and everything like that. But I mean, I'm still waiting for the time where it doesn't necessarily pay off, right, Tyler?
Yeah.
Because so far so good it has, and as you alluded to with Major League Baseball, yeah, same old, same old. The White Sox have been horrendously bad in payroll, and it's been the reason why they haven't been winning baseball games.
And I think it's become exceptionally harder now in this expanded college football playoff era. Last year we had 12 teams. Same thing this year. Next year we expect either 14 or 16. So you're adding more layers to it, where years and years ago, if you went and had a strong regular season in the BCS era, maybe won your conference championship, you had one game, just one game to play, that national championship, to pull one more upset and win it all. But now, when you look at these teams that are coming from these smaller conferences, Group of Five, even from the ACC and the Big 12, which obviously don't produce as much revenue as the SEC, they have to go through so many layers. It almost seems, I know Notre Dame got there themselves, and they're kind of an exception to the rule when it comes to being an independent, but I really don't think we're going to see anything other than these usual blue blood, top dollar type of programs routinely playing for and winning national championships.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. And, I think with this season, as much of a blast into parity as it was, I think we're going to start to see more of these blue bloods, continue to rise to the top of college football. And then, maybe eventually we'll start to see, our own, college football separate out from everybody else, because some of these smaller schools aren't going to be able to compete with these big dogs. So I foresee the whole landscape shifting as everyone else does. In due time. But yeah, it's just, the parity is going away as much as, we've liked to see it, this season and whatnot. And as much as it's been here for the meantime, for this new college football playoff, unfortunately, I think we're going to start to see a lot of the same teams at the top. And, it stinks. And it's the way that the game's evolving. And, it is what it is. But, force the teams to be better with donors and NIL too.
I do wonder, though, where's the limit, right? How far is one program willing to go to build the ultimate roster to win a national championship? Again, last year, $20 million from Ohio State was absurd. Now we have $35 to $40 million from Texas, and that does include the revenue share part of it, which we expect to go through here in the very near future. But, God, are we going to be talking about Alabama spending $50 next year? Is it going to be Michigan spending $60 or $70 a couple years from now? I know we kind of think that those numbers are too high, but nothing's really impossible in this day and age of college sports, and people will spend that money if they think it can get them what they want.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. You got to be in a spot to where, obviously your team is ready to go, raring, ready to go, ready to make a postseason run. But yeah, unless there's a cap put in, I can see some of these numbers running even higher, right? Especially these, these blue blood programs going to want to outdo each other too. I'm sure Texas, to some extent, $35-40 million saw what Ohio State did last year and was like, oh, we can do better than that. We've got a coach that's taken us to the college football playoff. Now, everything is lined up and ready to go. Might as well spend as much money as we can. And again, it's just furthermore leading to the separation of, the tops and the rich programs of college football down to the bottoms and the schools that can't afford as much.
By the way, you think there's a lot of pressure on Ryan Day last year to win the national championship? Try Steve Sarkisian with a $35 to $40 million roster, what many people think is the most talented quarterback in the entire country in Arch Manning, and obviously a bunch of boosters at Texas that have been very impatient waiting for a return to the national championship game. Good luck, Sark.
Yeah, no, Sark has been, dealt a loaded hand here. It doesn't help either that, Arch's last name is Manning either. Yep. It's drawing all of the eyeball, right? He's got enough money to make him happy from Red Bull. There's so much money going around that program. And, what happens, obviously, if postseason expectations don't line up, Sark is on the hot seat. And it's crazy to say that. If expectations don't get met this year, even with the roster and all the success that he's had early on there at Texas, it's just the nature of college football. And if all these boosters are going to spend all this money and you're not going to win, sorry, they're going to find somebody else that will. So, yeah, a lot of pressure on Stark, like you said, Tyler. And, it's going to be interesting to see how high these roster total gets, man, because I think we'll see a $100 million roster before there's a cap put on it, to be honest. Yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked by that, and I don't see how you can put a cap on it because of the legality aspect of everything. So we're definitely in a new realm of college football. It's not what we grew up on. That's definitely for sure.
Yeah, certainly not what we grew up on at all, Tyler. But again, it's come a long way from McDonald's money in McDonald's bags and all of the shadiness, that used to happen. And I guess I'm here for it in that regard too. Less rumors going around for sure.
College athletes went from getting money in McDonald's bags now being able to own their own McDonald's if they really wanted to, which is crazy.
Absurd.
Yeah, I know.
But that's the nature of the game, I guess.
It certainly is. And again, we still love it and we're still going to follow it regardless. Joe, appreciate your time as always. And we'll check in with you down the line here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Appreciate you having me on as always. And enjoy the rest of the show and good luck with it. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll come back, wrap up the hour, tell you some cool things about Lenore Sellers and what he's doing out in the community. Coming up next, Extra Point, Tyler Head along with you on your Friday here on The Game. Welcome back in, Extra Point. It's our head along with you. 4 more minutes to go here to wrap up the Extra Point, and then we'll get into the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Before I tell you some cool stuff about Lenore Sellers, Casey and the Sunshine Band is heading to the Township Auditorium coming up tomorrow night, at 7:30. We still have 2 pairs of tickets to give away right now on our text line. Firehouse Subs text line, 803-404-6100. Text in KC tickets if you want to win tickets to see Casey and the Sunshine Band tomorrow night at Township Auditorium. If you're one of the winners, we'll text you back and ask for some more information coming up a little bit later and try and get you those tickets as soon as we can. But again, text in now, 803-404-6100 if you want to win yourself some tickets to go see Casey and the Sunshine Band tomorrow night over at the Township Auditorium right here in Columbia. Joe and I, in that last segment, were talking about NIL. Obviously, Texas going to be paying gobs of money to its roster to ensure that it has a national championship level team. And again, this is going to become the norm for years to come because it's wide open. You have the ability to do that. And obviously, when we talk about NIL a lot, it can be very vilified very easily because it does influence a lot of the negative things happening around the sport. And look, I'm pro player getting paid. I always have been, always will be. But we're all very aware that it's definitely run further than we thought it was going to in terms of this Wild West that we like to talk about, no parameters, all those kind of things. But that doesn't mean the effects of it are always negative. Case in point, and there's a good article on the state newspaper website by our guy Jordan Kay talking about what Lenore Sellers did for South Florence High School, where, of course, he played and had a very successful career before coming to South Carolina. The other night, donated $16,000 to that football program. And again, we're talking about any high school sport, football, baseball, basketball, wrestling, tennis, any money goes a long way, whether that be for equipment, whether that be for fields, playing pay your dues, whatever it may be. Like, that's going to help out that program in a lot of ways. And it's very cool to see Lenoris, pay it forward like that, right? And that very much reflects the type of guy that we know Lenore Sellers is. Very kind, very considerate, very generous, and cool to see him obviously not forget where he comes from and understand how South Florence High School was able to propel him to get to South Carolina and, again, try and help those guys out any way that he can. Also, speaking of Lenore Sellers, I thought this was pretty neat that as we, talk about brand deals and stuff like that, he has signed a deal with Collegiate Legends, which will produce a Lenore Sellers action figure. So I know we saw some of his heroics a year ago, like to tout him as a Superman type of quarterback with the type of stuff he was able to do, game-winning touchdown run against Clemson, some of the crazy throws he was able to make. Well, if you think he's a superhero, maybe this adds fuel to the fire because he now literally has an action figure that you can purchase. I think it's available for pre-order through Collegiate Legends. I think it's $100, and it's got a little platform. It's got him, and it's got these like interchangeable hands. Like the stock model is him just kind of with balled up fist, but you have open fingers. You also have hands around a football, so you can move. And like any action figure, he's got joints that move around and stuff like that. So you can position him however you want on this little base and have your own neat little Lenore Sellers action figure. So that's pretty cool. Again, he's one of a handful of collegiate athletes that are participating in this. But if you want a literal Lenore Sellers action figure, so you can tout him as the Superman that he's been up to this point, then you can quite literally do that by buying a Lenore Sellers action figure. I do wonder, because this isn't anything like crazy, right? Like, that kind of makes sense. I had action figure or models or whatever, athletes back in the day, like Randy Moss and stuff like that. Think I had maybe a Steve Young too from his time with the 49ers. So this isn't anything outlandish, but I do wonder, as NIL continues, we got to see some outlandish stuff, right? Like, I don't know, are we going to get like an Arch Manning crockpot or something crazy that doesn't really fall in line with what the athlete is doing in terms of football, or something that they might legitimately use or promote in their real life? Because brands will slap a face or a name on anything to be able to sell it better. So if you got toothpaste and you can put, I don't know, Garrett Nussmeier on it, why wouldn't you do that? I don't know. I just feel like as this goes on, we're going to see more and more outlandish things come as a result of these NIL deals. But again, very cool for Lenore Sellers to not only get the action figure, but also, again, pay it forward in terms of giving back to South Florence High School and hoping to see that program continues to have more and more success going forward. And again, if he translates on to the NFL, continue to have a stream of money coming in where he can continue to do that for years and years to come. So good on you, Lenore Sellers, and hopefully that helps out South Florence High School quite a bit. That'll do it for the Extra Point. Coming up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. 11 o'clock, welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Chris Clark. Chris, I think I just saw Wes scurrying up the sidewalk, so he should be scooting in just a second, but he's a few seconds later than he normally is today.
Well, I'm on time, but, I normally beat Wes. There have been a few times, massive upset, where he's won the race.
Well, he's in the studio now. He's not sweating, so I guess he didn't have to run too terribly far to get in. But I did see
it's not hot today. It's a beautiful day outside in Columbia.
It looks like it. I've been in studio since like 5:30, so I'm looking forward to getting out and experiencing the sunshine in an hour.
Are you allowed to leave that bubble?
No, they locked me in here. There's a padlock on the door and everything.
Seems like that might be a HR issue.
They tell me I'm not allowed to talk about it. They shove food under the little door hole. And
I think that's that's 2 shows out of the last 3 days where we're worried about HR issues. So let's
we should probably steer clear of that if we're being honest here. Anyway, good news on the Gamecock football front. Yesterday we did get the commitment of Nolan Hay, somebody we've been talking about a lot this week, was on campus, I believe yesterday, and was very obviously impressed by his visit, and guys decided he wanted to become a Gamecock.
Well, as we always tell you, Tyler, Gamecock Nation, Gamecock Sports, it's going to deliver us something to talk about every single time.
Always does.
Always does. And so Nolan Hay, a multi-day visit, finished it up. The most interesting thing about this recruitment may be that so he had to get back yesterday in time to take an exam. So there are still academics involved in college football, even though it's entirely professionalized, which was, I don't know, just a little bit, just hearing that was like a little bit of a throwback for me where I was like, okay, all right, they do still go to class. That's good. But, good pickup for South Carolina. Obviously, we talked about, hey, what positions are they going to target in the portal? And the first one that was talked about was defensive tackle. The second one you started to hear, especially after they lost a couple of guys to the portal themselves, was, all right, they're going to go out and try to add an offensive lineman or two. And, Chris, Nolan Hay was probably, I would say, just during this window, and once we heard, hey, O-line is a target, there were about maybe 2 names that kind of got connected to South Carolina, and then very quickly it became apparent that Nolan Hay was going to be a target where there was kind of that strong mutual interest, but you still were just kind of like, all right, are they going to be able to win this battle? And this is a pretty straightforward recruitment, I would say.
It was. And, to back up real quick to your point about the portal priorities, it's been interesting to follow that evolving, right? Because you think, okay, it's a 10-day portal window in the spring. How much can things change, throughout the course of that? But you think about it, you finish up the winter portal window, you kind of know what your roster is, and the needs that you have going into spring ball, kind of regardless of how spring goes, right? Like, it might alter your thinking some, but I don't think anything was going to happen this spring that would change the fact that, hey, you probably need to go out and get a defensive tackle, right? That was going to be the case, I think, regardless. But there's some other things that did change even in that window because, of course, you can lose guys as well as gain them during that spring portal window. So South Carolina, it took, up until the end of the process, but they did get their guy in Troy Pikes at defensive tackle, took a couple of edges in George Wilson and Damon Clowney. But there was another couple spots that kind of maybe, altered a little bit, right? Like thinking about going portaling for a specialist. There was a thought going into spring, they may need to do that. They exited spring and said, no, actually, we feel better than we did about those spots. I think going into the spring window, there was a thought, may go take some offensive linemen. Then it kind of seemed like maybe they don't. And then by the end, they did. And I think a couple things in play there. One is just, I think you exit spring and don't feel bad about the offensive line, but you look at it and go, hey, we could stand to add some more competition here regardless. But then on top of that, losing a couple guys. And so just from a numbers standpoint, losing Cam Pringle and Ja'Kai Moore, talk a lot about practice and how much you're getting done in practice. The numbers matter. They were a little bit lighter than they wanted to be. And then when you lose Ja'Kai Moore, a guy who played 4 spots here during his career, played in a lot of games, started over 20 games. You're looking for a guy that you can plug in who's also versatile. And Hayes a little bit different than Ja'Kai Moore in that he's played center, right? He's played 3 different positions in college. I think they're right tackle, left guard, and center, if I'm remembering correctly.
I believe so.
And has played a bunch of ball. So this is a guy you're bringing in who's got size, he's experienced, and he's versatile. So it really kind of checks the boxes it looked like South Carolina was looking for once they decided, hey, we're full go trying to get another offensive lineman in this window.
Yeah, I think they love these experienced guys. And it's just different when you come in as a guy who's played a lot of ball and just lived kind of that college life for a little while. And you always hear, just in general, not sports talking, but just in general, that college is kind of when you're at that point in your life where you're kind of just growing up. And I think for South Carolina, they've had success bringing in these older guys and saying, hey, we're going to get older. And it's an example of a guy, he was at actually 2 smaller schools and now is going to have his opportunity at the SEC level, which I think was important for him. But, Carolina's saying, look, this guy has played a ton of football, and the versatility, I think, is a huge part of why you'd want to bring him in. And, Hay is a confident kid, too. Like, you're looking at it from a South Carolina perspective saying, you do need to add some depth, but you're also looking at it saying, look, you're not being promised a job, but you are being promised a chance to compete. And I do think one thing about the way Beamer and just his staff go about things is they do not promise, playing time. They certainly do not promise starting spots. And so if you're coming in, now you may be a guy who all of us are saying, like even Spencer Rattler, who we knew was going to come in and start, was not promised you're going to be the starting quarterback. So from the other end of that, we may be looking at it saying, hey, Boaz Stanley did really, really good at center. Feel good about the guards Carolina has. Obviously, the tackle spots, I feel like you feel good about probably 3 guys there. You're going, well, hey, guys, is this a depth piece? Well, no, this guy, he is also being promised the opportunity to come in and compete for a starting spot. And this is a confident kid who believes in himself and believes in his ability to do so. Now, if he is not the starter game 1, then you've added depth. Yep. If he is not the starter game 1, that doesn't mean he can't be the starter game 4, because you're going to have guys that roll an ankle. You're going to have guys that get bumps and bruises. It's a physical position in this league. So it's O-line's kind of a weird spot where you have the 5 guys, and if you're happy, if you're playing well, you'd really like to just keep the 5 guys out there. But as a season goes along, you are almost always going to need those additional guys.
And, of course, whenever you get somebody from an FCS level like Incarnate Word and Houston Christian before that, people are always going to be skeptical. Same thing like when you get out of high school that was a 3-star, but, and I brought this up to Jack earlier. You look back past a handful of years, and obviously sensitive subject now, but Juice Wells came over from James Madison when they were still FCS before transitioning up to, FBS a couple seasons later, and he obviously ended up having a huge impact in his healthy year a couple years ago. Last year, Torrey Simpkins comes in from, North Carolina Central, and people thought, well, what's this guy going to do? He ends up being probably the best overall offensive lineman that you had. So we do have to, while it's easy to get excited about Alabama and A&M guys and 4 and 5 stars out of high school, we've seen many times here, guys coming from these lower levels can come up, play at this level, and obviously be really, really good players. And again, I don't know if he's going to be a starter on the offensive line, but like you said, he's going to have his opportunity to compete. And if he goes out there and earns one of those starting 5 jobs, you have to assume that he's one of the best 5 that they have.
Yeah, and guys, at this point, I almost prefer going and landing some of these quote-unquote lower-level guys and bringing them up. Now, ultimately, it comes down to the individual, right? Like, we've seen South Carolina. I mean, they went out, obviously, different position, but you bring in a Sean Murphy from, Alabama, then Florida State, now South Carolina, Justin Okoronkwo from Alabama. They've gone that route, and you certainly, from a Carolina standpoint, hope that that's going to work. But I'm a firm believer that, if you can go out and get guys that can play and play consistently at some of the lower levels, that they can find a way to help you at the SEC level too. So ultimately, it is about the individual. But I saw one person respond on Twitter like, incarnate word, and I'm like, you haven't been paying attention, obviously, to the way things are right now.
Yeah, I would go back to my kind of my Mount Rushmore of underrated Gamecocks who people flipped out about as transfers with, Nick Muse, who was from Bill and Mary, and then you had, Nate Atkins from East Tennessee State, Jalen Brooks from Wingate, all did good things here, all still in the NFL, right? So there's almost this, to your point, Wes, about almost preferring it, like, shouldn't fans, if they're going to be skeptical, and some are, this way, you should maybe be just as skeptical about a guy who came from a Power 4 school and hasn't played, right? Like, if you're going to play the skepticism game. But Carolina's had success both ways. They had Spencer Rattler come in. He was from a big school, former 5-star. The linebackers you mentioned, Wes, Carolina at defensive tackle, they brought in Monkel Goodwine, who had barely played at Bama, but was a former top 100 recruit and looks like he did some good things last year and could be closer to unlocking that potential. Gabe Dendy, former 5-star, came from a name brand program who recruits very well in Texas A&M. Hasn't done as much, but there are reasons for that. One of them's injuries, right? So, the key is just like hitting the evaluation, whether they're from William and Mary or Texas A&M or Bama. Like, you just got to hit the evaluation, and we've seen success both ways. So I understand people when they see a transfer, they want every transfer to be a Spencer Rattler, but that's not the reality of it. And if you look around, Georgia, even Ohio State, like some of these schools who are doing extremely well have also taken guys from lower levels and had success, or they've gotten, a version of a Power 4 bounce back and had success with those guys too.
Well, and even speaking of Spencer Rattler, and I was not here doing this job when his transfer happened, but you're getting a guy that was benched at Oklahoma that didn't transfer here and saying, okay, can he be as good as we thought he was going to be out of high school? Obviously, he ended up having a very respectable career at Carolina and has gone on to the NFL, but there was even questions, I'm sure, that you guys were asking when he transferred over here, right?
Yeah, to an extent. We also, I think with Spencer, you looked back, I don't have his numbers in front of me, but you were going
his freshman year.
But then even his sophomore year, dude, his numbers were pretty good. Like, what?
No, go ahead.
Like, with Spencer, I'll say this. There was so much excitement about Spencer that there were blinders on. Like, nobody around here was going, oh, man, he threw some interceptions last year. Like, it was full. I remember, Chris, remember when we went live on, for the podcast that night.
Oh, God.
It was like Carolina had won a freaking title or something. Because they were going, look, this guy, you can go back. He was first team AP All Big 12 and the Co-Big 12 Newcomer of the Year, and had thrown for 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 7 picks as a freshman, and then had thrown for 1,500 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 5 picks in 6 games as a sophomore. So Spencer built a little different just because most of your Power 4 guys you're getting don't have the resume, which that's where the question marks come. Yeah, I think, right. like Monkel Goodwine, he came in, you're like, well, he's highly recruited, hadn't played a ton.
Sure. Yeah, so again, different way to look at all those guys, but again, see what Nolan Hay does as he comes in here to help shore up some depth on the offensive line and see if he can compete for one of those starting spots. We'll take our final position review coming out of spring football. Special teams, replacing a lot. That's coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, everyone. I want to tell you about our friends over at Game Day Men's Health. Dennis, Rob, and the whole crew over there do a fantastic job. If you've had any symptoms like chronic fatigue, loss of motivation, increased body fat, brain fog, mood swings, or muscle loss, you may want to get checked out by our friends over at Game Day Men's Health. You can go to GameDayMen'sHealth.com, search for the location closest to you. That's the location right off 2 Notch and I-77, conveniently located, and they can get you checked out. They've helped countless men. The first step is to contact the Game Day office in North Columbia. You can schedule an appointment. During your initial consult, they're going to perform a simple blood draw, results ready in less than 15 minutes, and then you can sit in their overstuffed chairs while watching the game and drinking a complimentary beverage. Then they'll let you know what you've got going on. They'll monitor you, ongoing treatment. GameDayMen'sHealth.com, Columbia location, GameDayMen'sHealth.com.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris wrapping up your week here on the game. As we've been doing slowly and steadily coming away from spring practice, taking a look back at all the position groups and where they stand as we get set to head into a little bit of an off time for the players as the month of May rolls on. They'll get back in for some workouts and obviously leading up to the start of the season with fall camp. And then August 31st against Virginia Tech will be here before you know it. Let's kind of wrap things up here with those position reviews. We get to special teams. And I used the phrase yesterday, hard reset, when we were talking about the linebacker room, because, of course, you lost 3 NFL caliber guys that were very experienced, had a lot of production even before they got to South Carolina in some cases, like Demetrius Knight, that obviously went out there and anchored the middle of that defense. Hard reset can also be used to describe special teams, because you've literally lost just about everything on special teams that you're trying to figure out how to replace your kicker, your punter, your long snapper, figuring out who's going to be returning kicks, who's going to be returning punts, who's your gunners on the punt team. Like, all these kind of things you got to figure out before the season gets here.
Yeah, you do. And I think what we've seen so far, what we learned during the spring, is there's some pretty good evidence that you have replaced what you would call a special teams weapon in Kai Kroger with potentially another special teams weapon in Mason Love. And so that's a good sign. That's a great sign, I think, obviously, for South Carolina. Now, regardless of the fact that Mason Love may hold down 1, 2, even 3 of those jobs, the unfortunate thing is that he can't do all of them. So that leaves you with some progress, but it also leaves you still with some questions. And Chris, I think it's obviously a great development for South Carolina that Love played so well. You have kind of those long-term things throughout a season, like, do you have wear and tear on a leg? Does it potentially affect a guy if he's having to punt, be the field goal kicker, and be the kickoff guy? Obviously, if he's also in the battle for holder, so if he's the kicker, he can't also be the holder. And then you you have all those other position groups that I guess the drop kick is still legal technically. So, but you have all those other positions that or roles that Tyler talked about there too.
That's the only thing we didn't see Kai Kroger. Well, we didn't see Kai Kroger kick a field goal. I wish we could have. But also, he did the drop kick. But if he somehow could have held his own kick, I mean, I'm not going to put it past him, But seriously, I think Love's emergence in that South Carolina feels like, hey, this guy's going to do something for us. Now, how many things does that end up being? It is a heavy load if you're thinking about, all right, he's going to do kickoffs, he's going to do punts, he's going to do field goal kicking. Even just, 2 of those 3 can kind of be a lot. I mean, people, poke fun at specialists or kickers, but, I mean, there is, fatigue when you talk about going through the course of a season. They can, have injuries that hold them back and limit them. I mean, Kai Kroger in the 2023 season had an injury, that he basically dealt with and played through for part of that season. And I think, frankly, that affected his performance because it was not his best year here as compared to, 2024 or even his great season in 2022. So the staff definitely feels better about it. As we were talking about, in the first part of the hour, there was a thought, and Joe DeCamillis said this, and Shane Beamer said it afterwards. Hey, we're going to keep our eyes open on the portal for specialists, whatever that may mean. So it's still a question mark, but I think you feel better about it. And, man, after the spring game, remember we were watching Mason Love, punt the ball, had the high-pressure kick in that situation. It just sounds different, when it comes off his foot. And when you hear that, when you say that about a guy, that's a compliment. He's got a big leg, high school. He was brought here as a punter, but in high school, he was not only a strong punter, but he broke his school record multiple times for longest field goal. He's got range. And so there's still some questions to sort out there. There's questions to sort out everywhere. I think people tend to think of field goal kicking. They tend to think of punting. They don't think as much about snapping or who the gunner is, but those things are all important. And Delvon Campbell, did a great job as the gunner last year. So those are things you still got to figure out, but you've got more time to see how they shake out for you.
Obviously, as well, you're working out, your kick and punt returns as well. And I know, kick return or punt returning is something that we've seen Jalen Kilgore do over time, but you had a bunch of different guys rotating in, as you would expect in the spring game. And there were some issues in terms of fielding some of those punts. And again, you can kind of chalk that up to some young guys, maybe not quite, being ready for the lights and those kind of things. But that's also an area that's very important that doesn't get talked about as much as your return game as well. A little bit more on the punt side of things because kickoff returns aren't as prevalent as they used to be. But obviously, making sure you win the field position battle and having good punt returns is very key thing you need to figure out as well.
Yeah, and, Joe D was highly complimentary of Jalen Kilgore in that battle. I think you would at least say he was maybe the front runner for that spot coming out of the spring. Now, there's some young guys there that I think certainly can help you eventually. I always thought Vakari Swain, once he's back with the team full-time, I always thought he was a guy who could make a great punt returner and did a lot of that in high school too. But, kickoff return, you certainly want a guy back there when you do have those opportunities to return them. And but I think as much as it's not as maybe exciting for the fans, the first thing with that punt returner is just, hey, you got to be able to catch the thing, because there are a few ways that you can turn a game around in the negative quicker than getting a stop, getting your defense off the field. Your defense gets themselves off the field, and then you give the ball right back to the opponent with about 45 extra yards of field position. Like, that's an absolute killer. So I think for those guys, the fact that Kilgore has caught punts in games last year and has shown he can do it consistently, that gives him a big leg up. Brian Rose, a guy I think is ultimately at some point in his career going to factor in heavily in special teams potentially, but another guy that I think would be someone to keep an eye on long term. Ultimately, guys, how many roles does Mason Love actually take? I think is the question. In a perfect world, I think right now it might be hard for anybody to beat him out for field goal and punter. Can you put the kickoff specialist role on somebody else just to take those, anywhere from, you're kicking, hopefully you're scoring, so you've got your kickoff at the beginning of the game or half, plus 5 or 6 maybe kickoffs throughout the rest of the game. And so can you take that off his leg and if another guy's showing he can be highly accurate, you could maybe have a short-range field goal guy and a longer. Personally, I don't really love that. I'd rather just have my place kicker be my place kicker and let him get all those reps kicking. Sure. But Mason was kicking about a 41-yarder, and that thing almost hit our guy TKO Sam up in the halfway up the student section bleachers. So he was hammering the ball and is a talented kid. But guys, Chris, somebody asked me on Twitter, it was like a broad question, I don't think they've been paying attention. Hey, have we fixed our field goal issues from last year? And I said, no matter how good you feel about field goal kicking, you never, ever evaluate a kicker based on practice or scrimmage. That's all you have to go on right now. Yeah. But ultimately, it's such a mental position. You have to be able to show you can do it in games, no matter how good you look at this point in the process.
Yeah, totally agree. You got to see it in a game, and we can't even get close to answering that until we see it in a game.
Again, special teams, one of many areas on this team. We're going to have to wait and see the full results of when the season does ultimately get here. A lot of drama going on around the country when it comes to NIL and transferring, and got some updates on what's going on with Madden Iamaleava as he left Arkansas for UCLA to join his brother. That's coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game.
All right, guys, you know it. This show brought to you by our friends over at Firehouse Subs. Hit up firehousesubs.com right now. Go ahead and order your lunch, or do what we do. Get the app, download it, create an account. You're going to get free food every single time, or you're going to get points that you can then later on trade in for free food. Everybody's got their favorites. Number one on my power rankings right now. By the way, guys, we still didn't do our list of power rankings, so we're going to have to do that at some point. Brisket, add bacon. It's number one for me. It's number one for our guy, Larry Chandler, who is the operator of the empire of Firehouse Subs that are throughout all of the Midlands. No matter where you are in the Midlands right now, when you pull up that app, click the closest location, there's going to be one right nearby to you. So you can order it right there. It's going to be waiting for you on the shelf when you walk in. Great subs, great selection. You already got your favorites maybe, or try something new today at Firehouse Subs, firehousesubs.com, Firehouse Subs app.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris, along with you on your Friday here on the game. Reminder, Gamecock baseball back in action tonight, taking on Florida. 7 o'clock first pitch, pregame at 6:45. Tomorrow, first pitch at 4 o'clock, and then Sunday wrapping up the series at 1:30 over there at Founders Park. Chris, you brought this to my attention yesterday, and it's an interesting story to dive into. I feel like all the Bill Belichick stuff is kind of taken the headlines away from Nico and everything going on with UCLA, but if you have forgotten, his little brother, Madden, who had been a UCLA commit, flipped to Arkansas on signing day, and then re-entered the portal and went back to UCLA to join his brother the other day, is now being pursued by Arkansas's collective, Arkansas Edge, to try and recoup some of the money that they had already paid him for his initial NIL deal. And this is very much out there because Hunter Yurachek, the athletic director at Arkansas, literally put out a statement on Twitter saying as much. They are going out there trying to seek that money to be returned from Madden now that he's at UCLA.
Yeah, and when this first came up, I'll admit I'm honestly still have a little bit of confusion because I've seen both. I've seen initially, hey, he hasn't been paid anything, right? Then I've seen the amount that Arkansas Edge, which is the collective in Arkansas, is seeking more than twice what he has been paid. So regardless, there's some issues here, right? And we all know that everything has been very much slanted towards players' families, their agents, because everything was so slanted the other direction for years. Guys getting a hamburger or $20 for doing an autograph and you're missing games, you're suspended. And because there was no bridging of that gap, once the faucet came on, it has been running ever since, and it's flooded now. So, it's just, these things are really hard because it's hard to write a contract, even if you're an NIL collective, because you can't supposedly legally build in certain protections that you would normally have in a contract. We're all still pretending that it's not pay for play. And so when you have to pretend, you have to get very creative, and that can cause some problems, right? So, one of the issues here with this contract for this quarterback is he was going to do, pretty well for himself, and then he can leave. You're not actually contractually bound like you are if you sign, say, an NFL contract. If you sign with the Panthers, you can't go play for the Falcons unless you're released, sign a new contract with them unless you're traded. But again, because of this kind of guys that we're under right now, can't really do it that way. So, collectives, whether or not they've paid out, Arkansas is one of the first to really say, hey, we want to start enforcing these provisions. And so the attorneys have now gotten involved, and it's a lot of, frankly, legal mumbo jumbo. But what they're going to have to prove is that there was some type of damage. Again, if it's like a coaching contract or if it's an NFL contract, it's clear. It's laid out. There's damages in there. But you have to tie everything to some type of marketing, right? So I think what's on the radar now of collectives, until something changes, this has gotten everybody's attention. But if you're going to do liquidated damages versus a penalty, again, legal mumbo jumbo, but you're going to have to get more creative because people are getting kind of fed up with guys signing deals and then going to another school or leaving after a year, leaving before you even get there, leaving before you've played a snap. But again, I go back to the general point. Without collective bargaining, stuff like this is going to keep happening.
Well, and if Arkansas Edge does win out in this and they do recoup that money from Madden, which again is said to be in the neighborhood of about $200,000, this could be a way, if other collectives around the country are able to set it up this way, that could, and Andy Staples has a good write-up about this in On 3, that could eventually start discouraging athletes from being so, willy-nilly when it comes to transferring, because they might be on the hook to pay a lot of that money back they've already gotten to whatever university that they're leaving. Again, not in every instance, but it's something that could become more prevalent.
Well, and I think it's interesting that Nico got all the attention. I think this was Pete Nico's point. Nico was probably the biggest story of the spring transfer portal window, yet it is his brother who all eyes really should be on this situation. I don't know if average fan is following this right now because they probably don't care, but if it could have the biggest effect on where things are moving forward. Now, again, asterisk, not a lawyer, so I don't know, but what precedent are, like, this could set a precedent, but what precedent do you set if you let some athletes leave without pursuing this, and then you do pursue it with certain athletes? Does that matter in the grand scheme? Because healthy transfers, you're not pursuing something, I wouldn't think, if you were okay with a player leaving.
That's a good point. And also, whatever that money value is. So, again, if a healthy transfer owes you, I don't know, $5,000 to $10,000, you trying to chase them down for that, as opposed to $200,000 or $500,000. Obviously, a big difference there that would obviously vary depending on who we're talking about.
And you have to answer to your fans at some point too, and they're going, "Hey, I've been giving to the collective, I've been giving to the school, and now, hey, this guy's going to just leave without even playing it down."
Yep.
Well, how much did he get? What did he? Well, and then here's the other part to Chris's point. How was it worded in that contract? Because here's the thing, it is, even though it is not pay for play legally. So if they were there for, say you're a January enrollee, January, February, March, April, almost, depending on when you got there in January, almost 4 full months, and they were doing appearances, which a lot of time that, a lot of schools, most of them have built in things the guys have to do in order to get their pay. Well, if they were fulfilling their responsibilities and doing their appearances, then is the contract, from a fan's perspective, they're going, they didn't play it down.
Right.
From a contract standpoint, are they able to say, well, I fulfilled my responsibilities, Chris?
Fair point.
Yeah, that's right. And it's kind of like, I think, to go back to your question of like the levels to it, right? Like, if you put a clawback clause in a contract and a player leaves and it's a healthy transfer, it's kind of like if a coach leaves. I mean, there are different circumstances there. Sometimes schools are going to pay the buyout. Sometimes they're going to fight the buyout. Sometimes they're, going to make another school pay the buyout. It just depends on the situation. I think here, again, it's just collectives are going to have to they're going to have to be able to value what these deliverables are that, again, can't be, he plays football for our school, like that. Revenue sharing contracts will be that, but collective contracts are not. They have to be tied to marketing. So if I'm running a collective, I'm trying to value my deliverables. I'm trying to promote that player with my collective so that, in theory or in practice.
Uh-oh. I think we lost Chris there. Hold on, try and get him back and wrap up the hour. This is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, guys. I want to tell you about our friends over at Classic Roofing. Hit up Classic Roofing today. ClassicRoofingSC.com, 803-590-7870 is the website. Of course, if you're in the market for a new roof, or even if you don't know if you are at this point and you want to go ahead and let them come out for a free estimate on that roof, what they're going to do the same thing for you they did for us, is they're going to come out and they are going to check out every aspect of that roof. They're going to let you know, hey, there may be a problem issue right now. Let's go ahead and get that fixed. There may be something that we can go ahead and knock out now to avoid problems later. Or maybe most importantly, they're going to say, look, everything looks great now, but you've got about 5 to 7 years left on this roof if you want to go ahead and be planning it out. So it's all about peace of mind for that roof, for your home or your business. If that sounds good to you, ClassicRoofingSC.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris here wrapping up the hour. We'll get to what Xavier Legette's going to be up to this weekend in just a moment, but by operator error, Chris accidentally got cut off at the end of our last segment. I promise I was not protesting what you were saying, but I will allow you to finish your thought.
Yeah, it's all good, Tyler. No problem at all. I don't know if I had anything extremely illuminating to add, but I appreciate you letting me finish anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's just really, there's clawback clauses. They have been common from collectives for a while, right? Trying to put in some type of, they wouldn't call it a penalty, but attorneys on players' side and agents and players, they would call it a penalty. It was kind of making it the difference, if this makes sense, between a penalty and some type of damages for breaking that contract. And some of them have done it in smart ways, some of them maybe not so much, but the common thread is not many of them have attempted to enforce it so far. So we may start seeing more of that if Arkansas Edge has some level of success, whether it's with a court ruling, a settlement. If they have some level of success with this, you'll probably start seeing it from a lot more collectives.
Yeah, certainly some to track as this whole Imaliaba saga on both sides continues to go down as we get closer to the start of the 2025 season. I don't know how much you're interested in the Kentucky Derby coming up this weekend, but maybe the NFL's social media correspondent on site will help you tune in.
What's going on, y'all? I'm out here with them horses. I'm be at the NFL social correspondent that week at the Kentucky Derby. We got a mini thoroughbred right here. Got my rider Steve right here. Got my man Ronnie right here. Hey, them my boys now. They ride for real. That's why we gonna do it here. Come on. So be ready now. Put him in the race too now if they want to do it.
Xavier Legette is a first-round draft pick. He makes millions of dollars. He plays football at the highest level possible. But I think his dreams are really coming true this weekend, getting to hang out at the Kentucky Derby to be the NFL's social media correspondent.
I'm just mad that I don't believe Dollar Bill's getting to go with him.
I don't think Dollar Bill's going to get to run, unfortunately.
Yeah, Dollar Bill, almost as famous around here as Legette, but very smart marketing by the NFL, and pretty cool to see Zabo get these opportunities in front of the camera.
Yeah, it is. I mean, dude, all I can think about now, and we knew, like, I feel like we missed too much of Zay when he was here, right? Like, we got some bits and pieces. We got some Xavier Legette press conferences. We learned some about him. But since he's gone to the NFL, I think it has been, like, smart marketing. It's been kind of the world finding out about Xavier Legette. Like, have y'all seen this guy from the Panthers and the way he talks and, like, that type? Like, things that we already knew, but we've just seen this expansion, and it's kind of taken a life of its own. So I'm just sitting here going, man, honestly, we missed out on some opportunities here in Columbia, having Zay around and having him do some more things. There are probably some brands around Columbia and around the state that are like, we probably should have done a little bit more of a Zay when he was here, you know?
Well, and we obviously got to talk to him right before the end of his time here when he came out and hung out at Firehouse Subs, and he was more open with us there, but typically, like in press conferences, him and Spencer do most of the talking. So it was kind of covered up, and he just wasn't quite out of his shell. And I don't know if he worked with a team as he got into the NFL to be a little bit more open with these kind of things. But man, he is taken off in a lot of different ways. And obviously going into year number 2, and the on-field production is very important. But he's here, there, and everywhere. Podcasts, promotions. I still say it's lava time anytime I see those Reese's lava cups because the commercial that he did for it. Like he's having an impact.
Well, and yeah, I think the confidence level and putting himself out there just grew. And, the confidence level on the field, too. Like, his career was kind of quiet up until that final year. So it was kind of a perfect storm, kind of in a negative way, I feel like, in terms of just we didn't quite get to see the full personality come out. And now it really has. And he's obviously confident in who he is and showing that, which is awesome to see. Also, speaking of Gamecock legends, or I believe will be a future Gamecock legend, did y'all see that Lenore Sellers gave $16K back to South Florence High School football? Pretty awesome.
Yeah, very cool. Using his NIL well. He's also getting an action figure from Collegiate Legends as well.
Yeah, the action figure, like, I was a big Wes. I know you were. Well, both of you guys were big wrestling fans. Did y'all get into the wrestling action figures?
Oh yeah,
I was a big. That was my jam back in the day. So I ran this by my resident design guy, Kev Roche, our guy Wes, and he made a great point. Honestly, missed opportunity with not having the removable goggles for sellers as an accessory. You know, that would have put it over the top for me. But still very cool nonetheless. But giving back the money was awesome. In typical Lenoris fashion, he's like, yeah, I made a little bit of money, so I decided to give some back.
Yeah, look, humble kid, obviously local. You know, he's obviously getting what he deserves as a player, but you've never felt like money was at the forefront of his most important thing when it comes to playing at South Carolina, which is good to see because not everybody can say that.
Yeah, for sure. And he's not changed is the great part. Same dude he's been since he was in high school and since he got here to South Carolina, despite all the fame and the money.
Excited to see him in year number 2 as a starter. That'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Presented by Firehouse Subs, halftime show. Terry Ford coming up next here on the game.